Oh, kia ora. Welcome, everyone. Brilliant. Should we just kick off?
Yep.
Cool. Just making sure everybody's in the right place. This is a webinar co-hosted by Te Hiringa Mahara and Leva Pacifica on Pacific people's mental health and wellbeing outcomes and achieving equity. So just good to go? Yep. Before we kick off our webinar today, I would just like to open us up with, or invite Mark Ezekielu to open us up with a karakia, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Ella. I'll start us with a karakia. Starting us with a tatalo this morning. I'll finish with a karakia just to round it off. Tātou tatalo. Whawhitai loa whio, ono loa lofa whaasoa mo I mātou le whanau. Pei tai una e sira whia le mātou wha moi moire nei aso. Ua whiangai ai mātou ma tiute ua e tua whia. Ai o mātou tangata. O le mātou te whala atu. Mana whaanau nau I lau whio. Nei e whitosoa ni mai mātou lai vai ngā. Whitosoa ni mai. Ia whaatasi mai le mātou mawhitanga o le a mataina. Wha I mai ni manatu mani whautuanga. A wāse le leo whiau. Tiute mga ruenga a wāse le mana I manuia le mātou mawhitanga. Whapa ia mai. Ie e wha I mai loanga le. Ma whapmanuia mai le mātou mawhitanga. O loa lofa Yesu. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the new day. We thank you for the new opportunities that come with each dawn, which includes our upcoming seminar. We ask that you be with us over the next while as we hear and discuss an important topic for us, our work and our communities. We ask that you prepare the space for us and for our presenters and our participants. Allow our distractions to fade away, fade into the background so that we may be present. We thank you for your continuous love for each and every one of us. In the name of whatever higher power we each believe in, we all say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Ngā mihi. And just before we kick off, I would just like to do a little bit of introduction just around who we're going to, around our speakers today and who we've got. But yeah, first, just a massive thank you for joining us today. This is such an important area of mahi for us and for Leva. So just a massive thank you for being here today to discuss this very, important area with us. So just as a way of introduction, from Leva Pacifica today, we just heard from Mark Ezekielu. He's one of the senior managers at Leva Pacifica. We've also got Dr. Elizabeth Mati. She's the general manager for Leva Pacifica. And we've also got Denise Kingi Uluave as the chief executive from Leva Pacifica. So welcome to you all. Thank you so much for co-hosting this with us with Te Hiringa Mahara. We're really looking forward to it. From Te Hiringa Mahara today, the Mental Health and Wellbeing Commission. You've got myself, Ella Cullen. I'm one of the directors here. I look after the Wellbeing System Leadership Group in Data and Insights. We've also got Matt Bloomer, who will be speaking. He is the principal advisor in the Wellbeing System space. And we've also got the lovely Katie Sheriff. She'll be looking after us as the other principal advisor, engagement priority populations. So you've got an awesome crew today looking after you. So we're just really looking forward to getting stuck into the mahi. And just quickly, a little bit of housekeeping for the webinar. We've got a Q&A function. So if you've got any questions, put them in the Q&A and Katie's going to be looking at those and sort of filtering them for the speakers throughout the session. So please just put your questions in there. Cameras and mics are turned off for the webinar just to keep things sort of tidy. So please just use that Q&A function for any comments or questions. And just as a heads up, we are going to traverse a few topics that can be upsetting to some, such as sexual violence, abuse and suicide. If you do need to take a bit of time out, please do. That's all good. And support is available if you need it. You can call 1737 or Safe to Talk. and we will also share some resources at the end of this presentation with you following our talk. And just a little bit towards the end, and I can talk about this at the end as well, we will be recording the webinar and it will be available on our website after and also on YouTube, and we'll send out the link to everybody that's registered after the webinar. We've also got a feedback form at the end where people can also ask any further questions that we may not have answered. So yeah, and we'll send out the answers to these questions along with a seminar recording. So if you don't get your burning question answered, hopefully we can get to that at the end of the webinar, but we promise to do our best. Katie's promised to do her best, so we'll, we'll get there in the end. Cool. So I guess just as a introduction to this mahi and why we did this work, in terms of the Te Hiringa Mahara, we are an independent watchdog of the mental health and wellbeing system. We have a mandate to assess and report publicly on the status of mental health and wellbeing for people in Aotearoa. And we do that using our He Ara Oranga Wellbeing Outcome Framework. We also have a particular regard in our legislation for Pacific peoples in terms of assessing, reporting, monitoring outcomes, which then goes on to inform our advocacy actions. Within the Wellbeing System Leadership team that Katie and Matt and myself are part of, we also have a role to convene multiple agencies together to talk about big kaupapa and big system issues like improving Pacific wellbeing outcomes. And it's just important to know that equity underpins all of the work that the Commission does and is a long-term strategic priority. So all of these big drivers kind of got us to a point where we needed to understand a little bit more around what was happening for Pacific people, what mental health and wellbeing outcomes and some of the inequities that were coming up through our assessment and reporting to date. We've done a couple of things in the past. We've got our wellbeing baseline report that fed into this work, and also the Pacific COVID-19 insights paper that showed a lot of disparities in outcomes for Pacific peoples specifically. We also wanted to reconnect with a lot of the early mahi in 2023 that we did, bringing together agencies responsible for reducing disparities in terms of outcomes for Pacific people. So off the back of all of that mahi, we basically sought to provide a snapshot of the factors that contribute to mental health and wellbeing in 2024, so a recent snapshot, and the intent of the work is to inform policy decisions and sort of system setting changes. So that's just a really broad introduction in terms of why we did this work and our mandate behind that mahi. And so I will pass it on to Matt to talk about the report itself, some of the key findings from the work. Yeah, so over to you, Matt.
Kia ora, thank you very much. With any luck, we should have some slides popping up in a sec. Hey, things are happening.
Ah, cool.
What we saw and what we had, there we go. So as Ella said, we sought to understand, we'll provide a snapshot. Oh, we got your chat screen there as well, Stephen. Perfect. So we're seeking to understand Pacific wellbeing and make understand what was contributing to good and bad wellbeing and make suggestions on ways to improve. And as part of that, we looked at 22 indicators that exist under our wellbeing framework, and they chose those 22 as the ones for which data was available for Pacific communities, and that was up to date and able to be understood in that way. And across those 22 indicators, all but one of them showed Pacific people's wellbeing was poorer than the broader population. And that standalone one, was self-rated family wellbeing. This might not be a surprise to a lot of people on this call, but I think it was stark to see it that unanimous across the data. And so based on that, or drawing from that data and then engaging with Pacific communities, Pacific organizations and Pacific partners across government, and I recognize a few names in the attendee list here today, so welcome and thank you to those who contributed already to this work. We engaged with those people and sought to understand what was behind that data and what the answers were. Most importantly, what Pacific people taught us was the key stuff to look at. So over the next few slides, I want to highlight the key points from our report. I'm not going to go into it in huge detail because we don't have the time and you can read the report, but look at both those problems faced and what we heard about the solutions that would make a difference for Pacific wellbeing in Aotearoa. We have a slide, please, Stephen. The short version is it's not rocket science. This line here is actually from, I think, MPP's Talanoa series in 2022. And it's one that came up in the very start of us preparing this work, and it stuck with me throughout the project. And it was reflected repeatedly by people that we spoke to as we went about this work. In short, it shows that, well, the best time to invest in the health and well-being of Pacific people was 30 years ago. The second best time is now. And so that sort of drove this piece of work and drove what we said at the end, which is, yeah, we need to see action. In particular, there were 3 areas that Pacific people and organizations told us were key to supporting future mental health and well-being. These obviously won't be the only factors, of course, and Denise will cover the factors that influence Pacific young people in a lot more detail than we were able to. But there were 3 key points that we heard time and time again. Slide. And the first one was about education. Education is critical to future well-being. Again, not rocket science, but it was repeated time and again. And one of the underlying messages we heard a lot related to the history of Pacific peoples in New Zealand, the reasons they came here, or their families came here in the past, and the well-being that would be unlocked by access to good education for them and their kids and for future generations. But Pacific people face greater challenges than most other groups in accessing education. And until these inequities are addressed, in the words of the Productivity Commission's recent report on persistent disadvantage, education systems in Aotearoa, New Zealand are more likely to reinforce advantage rather than acting as interventions through which equity can be achieved. You know, we talk about education as being the answer to upward social mobility or the like, but the current barriers to accessing education mean that many people, and far too many Pacific young people, are unable to access education and those benefits. We saw that many Pacific young people are increasingly disengaged from education, and we heard about the pressures they face to meet the expectations of their family and their community, to achieve at school, but also to contribute financially, particularly through the pandemic. So as beyond these challenges, we heard about approaches that help, and Talanoa Ako was one of those good examples. It's a program funded by the Ministry of Education. It's delivered by community groups, churches, trusts, health providers, sports clubs, teachers, boards of trustees, and schools. And it equips and empowers parents and families in their communities with the skills and knowledge and confidence to champion children's education. There's different versions of it based on how the parents choose to be involved, but they involve things like sessions covering topics such as NCEA and time management and skills and literacy and numeracy and how school reporting works. And parents who took part sort of affirmed the role and responsibility they had in supporting their children's education and in ways to explore and master the knowledge and skills they needed to take part in that journey. And importantly, it reinforced that Pacific identities and language and culture were valued and present in this work. Jump slide. So the second message we heard on repeat was about housing. You see the big stat there. Home ownership can help provide families with security, but it's not always an option. The home ownership rate for Pacific families is a lot lower than for New Zealand Europeans. But along with the stability of home ownership, there's also other things that come with high quality or stable housing. So there's clear links between stable, warm housing and better well-being in satisfaction and physical health outcomes. This is, again, not rocket science, but it comes home again and again and again when it keeps showing up in the stats again and again and again. Warm, dry houses prevent illness and hospital visits, and they impact on school and work attendance. So now we're back into the education thing. Unaffordable housing contributes to poor mental health. Stress comes with that, and it's seen in the mental health stats. Poor quality housing is associated with a twice the likelihood of having poor mental well-being. And there's a lot of action required here to ensure that all people in Aotearoa can access stable, healthy housing that is right for them and their families and their circumstances. And we heard again that, and this is repeated, I think, in findings from Stats NZ, that the New Zealand housing system doesn't provide solutions very well for Pacific families, for intergenerational housing, for dealing with the different needs and realities that people live in. But again, there are examples of good things that work. Tupu Wise, which is outlined here, is a financial literacy program. Supports specific individuals and families to learn more about their finances, and for a lot of them, it puts them on a path to home ownership. There's some great evaluation coming out of it. It shows that people are much more confident in dealing with money after taking part of the program. By the end of the program, people have financial plans and budgets in place. They turn that into effective systems for looking after their money. Their debt reduces. They have savings. They have KiwiSaver. They have improved credit scores. This support helps people get on the path to financial sustainability and housing sustainability and all the good things that come with that for positive mental health and wellbeing outcomes. Slide. The third thing that we heard time and again was related to employment and income, and we highlight both here for a very specific reason. The Pacific unemployment rate is 6.6% at the last measure, I believe, which is more than that of the total population. And as that stat there shows, under half of Pacific families have enough income to meet their needs. An adequate income, besides meeting those needs, allows people to do other things. It gives them time to provide care and provide support. Pacific people are more likely to be engaged in unpaid activities, such as volunteering or community work, which often goes unseen and undervalued. And those activities are critical to supporting Pacific culture in Aotearoa and to supporting well-being and to supporting families and communities. And the reason I said that we highlight both employment and income here is that you cannot solve one without solving the other. And in particular, we know that the Pacific pay gap is huge and not closing or not closing quickly. We know that the factors that account for that, the work undertaken by the Human Rights Commission, I believe, looked into what caused that gap, and more than half that gap was from unseen factors, i.e. racism or unequal treatment rather than history and education and workplace experience. So these are things that need to be dealt with at a bigger system level. You cannot expect to improve the unemployment rate and still have the income that provides people with what they need. I think it's might be reflected later in Denise's points that Pacific children growing up in households with employed parents still face greater poverty than non-Pacific children. And again, examples of things are happening. Tupu Aotearoa helped more than 4,000 Pacific people into work. It's a program designed to support the Pacific people to find employment or to pursue further education and training. It's funded by Pacific Ministry for Pacific Peoples. It has providers all across the country who work on it, and involves navigators who mentor and provide support. Includes things like CVs and cover letters, job interview, as well as all that sort of pastoral care that sits behind that to make sure you can thrive. For most participants, there is increased regular income that comes from taking part in a program like this. Younger participants feel a sense of responsibility and are able to meet their financial obligations, both to pay for the things they need, but like we said earlier, to meet the family and community and church obligations. And it's therefore it provides and supports well-being, and including having high quality and permanent employment gives you access to things like sick leave and annual leave, and so people are able to take care of themselves. I'm just going to keep shooting through. Stephen, if we can go to the next slide, please. what came from all this? So again, there's much more in the report than I've managed to fly through in 10 minutes. But we highlighted a set of calls to action. I'm not going to go through these each in detail. Again, they're in the report, and I would love for you to read it and take a look. But there are two things that I would highlight from here, and from what I've just flagged with you already. Many of the answers are there in communities. Communities need resources, though, and need to be involved in decision making. So too often we heard that, for those of us on the call who work in government, that government contracts and funding and the way we fund organizations doesn't fit with the realities of what the communities need. So here in this report and previously in our work at Hiringa Mahara, we've called for high trust contracting, flexible ways of providing resources to community organizations so that they can do good in a way that the communities need. We keep hearing about how well this worked during the height of the pandemic, when government realized that we need to access community organizations in order to achieve things, and provided flexible support. But that can continue to work now. It doesn't have to resort to the old ways, as it were. And the other thing that I'd highlight from these, and as these examples that I've mentioned have shown, the solutions that work so often involve the whole family. And this is something we heard time and again from Pacific communities as we talked to them, Pacific organizations, was understanding the importance of family and community to Pacific people in Aotearoa helps understand how you can reach people. There are times, of course, there are services and there are needs that are very individual, and we heard that as well. But wraparound supports, things that like whānau order or similar approaches, show how engaging families and understanding their aspirations and working alongside families can help them access the things they need to thrive. It can help strengthen connections within the family and between the family and the wider community. And importantly, it gives people greater control and determination over their futures. And all of that is part of wellbeing. I'm going to leave it there. That's the high level, the fast level, the quick version of the report. And I really do encourage you to read it and to refer to it as often and as loudly as you want. But we're all actually here to listen to Denise. So I'm going to stop talking now and you can get what you came for. Thank you very much.
Just before you start, Denise, kia ora koutou, just a quick reminder to just chuck your questions in the Q&A function.
Maloe lele and warm Pacific greetings to our online audience. Thank you to Hiringa Mahara for the opportunity to present some of our learnings when working with our Pacifica youth. As Pacific peoples, we share a rich and enduring history with Aotearoa, New Zealand. Our youthful population means that Pacifica young people are and will continue to be vital contributors to the economic, political, cultural and social fabric of this nation. Their energy, creativity and resilience are vital assets that will help shape the future of Aotearoa, New Zealand. However, as Matt has outlined in his presentation, inequity still exists, and our Pacifica young people are having to navigate socioeconomic inequities and injustices, which are evident in significant housing, socioeconomic deprivation, Aotearoa being less welcoming, and are experiencing an increase in racism. While we are all aware of the impact that broader health determinants have on our mental well-being, we must also pay attention to other significant factors. In 2022, we conducted a discovery project involving over 900 Pacifica peoples across Aotearoa, New Zealand, to better understand the current and future health and well-being needs of our communities. Mental health was the #1 issue Pacifica people reported worrying about, including suicide, self-harm, depression, and alcohol and drug use. Complex family issues, particularly violence, was the second concern, followed by housing and income. The survey revealed that 92% of participants are worried about the impact of violence on Pacifica families and well-being. This includes physical and sexual violence within families and the resulting intergenerational trauma that causes. Young people noted the detrimental effects on family members' mental health and the urgent need to break the cycle of violence. So what have we learned recently from our young people? At LeVar, we have a decade of engaging and building trusted relationships with our young. which enabled us to gather important information to help drive our programs. It helps when you have a fantastic, useful staff and our youth advisory group guiding our mahi. So I'd just like to acknowledge them. I'd also like to acknowledge all of the young people who gifted us these important insights into their lives. I will be showcasing results from our ASB Polyfest survey collected in late March this year to further describe the current state of Pacific youth. And we'll also draw on data from our wellbeing study, as I mentioned, and 2 other Pacific youth surveys. The What About Me survey in 2021 involving 880 Pacific students, and the Youth Rangatahi Smart Survey 2019, which involved over 1,000 students. So in our survey, 65% of Pacifica youth rate their mental health as good or excellent, similar to as what Matt just referred to. And these findings were evident in the other 2 youth surveys, ranging from 57 to 70%. However, 28% of our young people experience serious distress, with females, disabled, and rainbow youth being more affected. According to the Youth 19 survey, the emotional and mental well-being among Pacifica students appears to have worsened over time. A higher proportion of Pacific students, nearly 25%, reported significant depressive symptoms, and there was an increase in students thinking about and attempting suicide. The top 5 factors impacting mental health reported by our young people at Polyfest included school responsibilities, a lack of sleep, social media, family responsibilities, and feelings of loneliness. Significant impacts on mental health also come from pressure from family to achieve and stigma around mental health. While it is positive that families want the best for our young people, our youth are reporting unrealistic expectations can have overwhelming, disabling, and distressing impacts. Things that they mentioned, improving their mental health, with things like listening to music, connecting with family and friends, prayer, and outdoor activities. Also, positive family relationships, strong friendships, and cultural connections are essential to well-being. As mentioned, family, friends, and teachers are highly rated as sources of support for our youth. Although young people value mental health, they often find it challenging to discuss these issues with our parents and families due to a lack of understanding and a fear of bringing shame to the family. This reluctance can prevent them from seeking necessary support. Therefore, while family are valued supporters, it is crucial that we educate parents about mental health, reduce stigma, and equip them with the knowledge and skills to identify early warning signs of distress and know where to access help. Recently, significant investment has been made into youth counselling sessions, but this assumes youth know how to or even want to access professional services. Unfortunately, data shows that a number of people who die by suicide have not accessed services prior to their death. Based on this premise, we must upskill those around our youth, such as our community members, our church members, our whānau, our sporting codes, to identify distress and warning signs and support them with the appropriate supports. So what are some of our key insights gained through our engagement with our youth? Systemic inequities in housing, education, and employment contribute to poor mental health outcomes. Racism and discrimination are significant barriers to achieving mental well-being. Cultural responsiveness, Pacifica youth seek support through family, friends, and teachers, as I've mentioned. Therefore, we must equip them with the skills necessary. And by Pacific, for Pacific services are effective in delivering better outcomes. Trauma and violence. Addressing violence and trauma, including child sexual abuse, is crucial for improving our overall mental well-being. Now I'd like to share an example with you of a Pacific primary violence prevention program that LeVar delivers with the funding of ACC. We know child abuse or sexual violence can have long-lasting effects on children's health and well-being. Results from the 2019 Family Violence Survey found that more than 1 in 4 females and 1 in 9 males reported experiencing sexual abuse before the age of 15. In the Youth 19 report, nearly 50% of Pacific youth reported they did not always feel safe. Pacific female students and those in high deprivation areas were even more likely to feel unsafe. Approximately a quarter reported unwanted sexual contact in one survey and 90% in another. Community engagement and education is a key primary prevention approach, and LeVar's Atumai Youth Program is an example of an initiative that utilises culturally appropriate methods to raise awareness and educate our communities. The Atumai program is a primary prevention program, as mentioned. We utilise socio-ecological and systems principles to prevent violence and sexual violence in our communities. But we cannot view young people in isolation from their families and communities, so we take a holistic approach. The aim of the program is to create attitudinal and behavioural change across generations. Engaging with the community is a vital part of our program. Engaging them in dialogue and education about sexual violence is crucial to changing behaviour, and we are encouraged by the recent engagement and know that our communities are ready for this. Programs that involve community leaders and youth can nurture a collective understanding of issues and promote pathways to positive change. We have involved communities at all phases of our program design and development and delivery, and in recent times have really been focusing on our efforts in terms of community mobilisation. We seek to increase access to services through building awareness, challenging beliefs that violence is normal, and encouraging help-seeking behaviours. We have done this through presentations, workshops, e-learnings, psychoeducation campaigns, and through community events. However, at LeVar, we also implement a number of other additional youth programs, primary prevention programs, tools and resources, all directed towards addressing issues identified as impacting on our youth mental wellbeing. So we have an RTD. This is a free online interactive problem-solving app that is accessed by approximately 1,300 youth each year. Mana Restore provides support for online gamers and their families. New Wave has a holistic wraparound youth wellbeing program covering cultural identity, mental health, respectful relationships and leadership. And our mental wealth workshops equip young people with the knowledge skills to address mental distress with a focus on anxiety and depression, which are the most prevalent mental health issues impacting our youth. And of course, I've talked about our Atumai program. So with all of that we know, what do we recommend? We need to implement policies to reduce socioeconomic inequities, such as improving access to stable housing, education, and meaningful employment. Importantly, address the pay equities and poor working conditions our families face. We need a major shift to a stronger focus on addressing the wider determinants of mental wellbeing and equip our communities, whānau, and individuals with early intervention skills. We need to develop targeted programs to address and prevent violence and trauma, including child sexual abuse with Pacifica families. Addressing root causes early can reduce rates of mental health, addiction, suicide, and other areas such as crime. And we need to offer trauma-informed care and support for affected youth to promote healing and well-being. In addition, we need to strengthen family, community and school-based support systems to provide holistic support for our youth, promote intergenerational understanding of mental health to bridge gaps between youth and the older generation, increase access to culturally appropriate mental health services, including both digital and in-person, support the development and sustainability of bi-Pacific for Pacific services to ensure culturally relevant care. Yeah, we need to create environments in schools and communities where Pacifica youth feel a strong sense of belonging and acceptance. To end on a more positive note, despite all these challenges, a majority of our young people are still expressing hope for the future. So 80% of our youth feel hopeful about their future. Many feel optimistic about whānau wellbeing, as Matt mentioned, and many have plans for the future. In conclusion, as we stand on the threshold of tomorrow, let us remember that our youth are the architects of our future. They carry the dreams of our ancestors and the hopes of generations yet to come. Each young person holds within them the power to change the world, to break barriers, and to create a brighter and more inclusive society. The future is not just something that happens to us. It is something we create. Let's create it with courage, compassion, and unwavering faith in the incredible potential of our youth. Mahalo e pito. And I'll stop sharing.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Denise. I just, what you shared is so important. So thank you for telling us about both the challenges, the beautiful good work that's happening, and also what we can do going forward. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So we are over to the Q&A session. So there have been some questions in the Q&A. It's not too late to send them, but I am just mindful that if you see me going like this, it's because I'm trying to write furiously and manage it all. So just I thank you all for your patience and understanding and your laughing face emojis. That's very welcome as well. The first question I'm going to ask Ella. So someone in the Q&A was talking about the importance of economic resilience. What programs are in place to support Pacific businesses who contribute to the New Zealand economy?
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, a pretty straightforward one. So in terms of what programs are in place to help Pacific business, the Pacific Business Village is there, which is supported by the Ministry for Pacific Peoples and Pacific Business Trust is available.
Awesome, thank you. We have had a number of questions about how providers, how organisations, how services, and how individuals can connect up, both with Leva, with ourselves, and with other communities and individuals. We will be sharing our contact information in this webinar, so please do reach out. Leva has a beautiful, beautiful network of people across the country. So I do encourage you to get in touch. I think something that is really important is that we're all stronger when we work together. And so the more that we can network and work together, the bigger impact that we'll have. I do have some other questions. What I wanted to ask each of our panelists, just short, sweet answers, please. If you could prioritise one thing to improve Pacific people's well-being, what would that be?
Okay, I'll go first. Talofa lava kia rana, everyone. So yes, I'm Elizabeth Mati, but I think if it was one thing, social determinants included, it's about actually having a primary prevention kind of focus. So preventing harm and from occurring in the first place by addressing kind of those risk factors and mitigating those and improving protective factors. I feel that, a lot of the funding is still not enough for secondary and after when harm happens, but it's really, really limited in primary prevention space. So while I agree we need funding all across the board, but we need a focus on primary prevention, which will address all of those factors in the socio-ecological model. Malo?
Perfect answer. Do any of our panelists have anything to add to that?
no surprise, of course. I agree with Liz there. But as I mentioned before, at some stage, in health, we have every door is the right door. And we at LEVAR think every person is the right person. So therefore, it is critical that we look at primary prevention and make sure that we are equipping everybody in the community to identify those warning signs and be able to respond in a really confident and compassionate way to anybody in distress.
Yeah, my cheeks hurt from smiling listening to that, Denise. I couldn't agree more. Matt, I see you've unmuted yourself. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Well, when you go and say that was a perfect answer, it's pretty hard to follow, isn't it? But, coming from the government end of things, and I guess hoping that some of our colleagues in government are listening, to me it comes back to the trusting communities and trusting those organisations that are embedded in communities that understand what's happening on the ground and understand that what the reality is that different families are facing and the difference that exists from one community to a next or from one region to a next. And so trusting those organizations and those groups to deliver that primary prevention, to deliver those supports, to deliver that effort on those social determinants so that people don't face the challenges that they otherwise do. Kia ora.
Matt, you're
Agree,
getting
agree.
Yeah, and so do our participants. There's a lot of hearts and thumbs coming up. It's exactly it. Trust is just so fundamental in any kind of environment, but especially working in government and striving for equitable outcomes. It's huge. Ella, is there anything that you wanted to add?
I'm not sure what else I can add at this point, but I do want to see at that government level a continued focus on mental health and wellbeing outcomes for Pacific peoples. This isn't the time to take the foot off the pedal. This is the time that we really need to actually activate. So it will require that increased effort across all government agencies to come together for that ongoing leadership, that monitoring and that oversight of these outcomes. Yeah, that's all I'd add to that.
And Hiringa and Mahara will be playing a pretty crucial role in this, won't we? In terms of our monitoring and advocacy role.
We do have a role, yep. Yes, but I think there is kind of that cross-government onus to really keep that focus there and make sure that we're kind of across it together.
Yeah. Matt, I wanted to ask you a question about the data. Was there any data or work done to other regions that we have included in our insights, or are we looking at doing that in the future?
Short answer, no, unfortunately. There are, again, some of you will be very, very aware of the challenges that come with trying to understand smaller and smaller slices of populations, and Pacific people are a growing population in New Zealand, but once you start to cut down by regions and places, it gets increasingly difficult to get high quality data. That said, we did ask about this during the course of our work, and some of the things, and again it comes back to my plea across government to better understand and trust communities. What we heard is that these differences that are present in different regions, that people who are involved with those communities understand and know about, especially the difference between living in Auckland or living in rural South Island, and there are growing populations around Oamaru and Timaru and the like. We heard about the challenges that people around Wellington are facing with housing cost, and therefore these growing Pacific populations shifting up the coast, up into the Manawatu, in order to have the quality of housing and stuff, but then also the challenges that come with that, for both in separation from work, but in separation from existing communities, and in terms of those of parts of government that provide services to communities. We need to be ready to move, and to ensure that we can support people when they're away from the sort of, I guess, the quote unquote traditional homes of Pacific people in New Zealand. Pacific people are moving and are responding to the environment, and that's got to be understood and acted upon. So sorry, and in response to your answer, the short answer is no. The longer answer is the information is out there, even if it's not in a form that government data normally collects. We've just got to go and ask.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We have another a question from someone in the chat for Denise or Liz. And this is talking about supporting our matua to be better educated on what mental health is. Are there any programs in place to support and help our matua?
Well,
Okay,
we
Liz.
actually have, oh, I'll let you go, Denise, your suicide prevention program.
I was going to talk about the program, the mental wealth program that we ran. I think you were there, Liz, with with a significant number of church ministers down in Aotearoa a couple of years ago. And initially there was some reservation, I think, from them in terms of what that all meant. But by the end of the workshop, we were really encouraged, and I think they still are providing their congregations with information about mental well-being and how you maintain that. And so Liz might know a few of the other programs. I just know the mental wealth program we delivered, but we've also got our Life Keepers, our Flow Pacifica for Life, which is a suicide prevention program that also delves into a lot more than suicide. It delves into how do you look after your mental wealth, how do you know the risk and protective factors and warning signs. So the Flow Pacifica for Life suicide prevention program, Flow Talanoa, is available to our communities. All of those are freely available. But Liz can talk about the Aotearoa program too as well.
And I think just key to what you're sharing, AD, is that, depending on the community, we modify our approach. It goes back to what Matt was saying, it's importance of Pacifica for Pacifica, but we know that we're nuanced, ethnic specific, and even by community, whether it's a church community, a sports community, school community, there's so many nuances. So in those programs that kind of Denise discussed, we also take into consideration the audience. So we have kind of modified our content when we did go into Porirua and talk to a room full of whaiwhiaos and stuff. So I think mental wealth and both Flow Talanoa are both great programs that are community-based primary prevention programs to increase awareness.
I'll just share a little story too. When we first started delivering the Flow Talanoa suicide prevention program, we had at the end of at the workshop, we had a minister stand up and very emotional and said, "Thank you for this. I had no idea I was part of the problem." And then a young person got up and was very emotional as well, with tears, and said, "Thank you for that. I never thought I'd hear the day that a minister said that. And so it gives me hope for the future." And so that was just, that's just so heartening to hear the two generations coming together and knowing that there is room for change. There is a lot of goodwill out there from our mātua.
It shows that beauty of just coming in with an open heart and open ears as well. And, just giving that space to listen to young people who are not leaders of the future, leaders today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I think we've got time for one more question. There are a lot of questions, so I'll sort of try summarize them as much as I can. But I did want to ask each of our panels for one thing that you want to see more of. And so it's not necessarily what would you prioritize. I want to celebrate the good stuff that's already happening in our communities in terms of what you would like to see more of. Denise, I might throw to you first because you're already on my screen.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of a joined up approach. I can see out there some amazing individual programs happening around. And if we all came together, I think, in a really coordinated approach, so that we haven't got duplication, that we are coming, that as you said, there's strength in combining and collaborating. And so if we could all do that, I think it would be, we'd see significant changes.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Liz.
Yes, thanks, Hattie. This is a hard one. I think similar to what Matt was saying, but I think more around the kind of funding and stuff. I feel like we need to provide more kind of funding to organizations that can then fund smaller community groups. We have the Suicide Prevention Fund that we commission each year. I mean, we get so many applications, so much demand for that fund. So it's kind of those kind of agencies that are able to kind of not necessarily give the $1 million contracts out, but the contracts out to kind of the churches, the sports clubs and community organizations. We need funds more closer to the ground. And we know that, whether the big kind of government organizations like ACC and Te Whatu Ora, it's much harder for them to get those funds into those places. So I would really like to see more like commissioning in innovative kind of ways, not what I've in ways where the community can actually design their service or their product, not this is a service or product and you have to do this, but actually,
Yes.
you know, to be able to give the community for what they want to do. I would love to see more of that and for it to continue, and not just in the suicide prevention space, but across the board. So like I said, communities have access to funds, but don't have to go through the kind of similar process.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Empower communities to support each other. But like how we worked in COVID, you know, when communities were just empowered, there was flexible funding, high trust. Matt, I'm
Yes.
going to go to you next.
Excellent. I'm going to put my policy wonk hat on, but I promise we didn't coordinate these answers, but it's just flowing so nicely because sitting inside Wellington and looking at the system that we operate in and operate alongside is, but feeding into that same point that Denise and Liz have both made, bringing together the actors in government and aligning or sharing our view on what it is we're each trying to achieve, and understanding, most importantly, those connections between one achievement and another, by which I mean, if you want to support mental health outcomes, you need good housing and income and education. But if you want to support good education outcomes, you need good housing and you need good family income, and you need to be healthy. If you want to support physical health outcomes, you need education and income and good housing, and you need good mental health. You know, the way these things tie together, it is
Yes.
really messy, but it's also really clear. And if we can bring those together in the way that we incentivize government decision making, then it's going to incentivize things like pooled funding that we can give to community organizations. It's going to incentivize those very actions that Denise and Elizabeth talk about and already do. So yeah, very much my policy wonk hat on and my Wellington boy hat on, but the same answer.
Oh, you're speaking the truth though, hey?
Matt.
Ella, really quickly, if there's anything you want to add, and then I'll just summarize and thank all these beautiful people for their time.
Awesome. I do just want to just to add that I do want to see us not let go of that strength-based inclusive narrative in government, especially when it comes to Pacific peoples and to youth, and a focus on those protective factors that Liz was talking about earlier, and celebrating those sources of well-being from a Pacific perspective. I think that ongoing investment in well-being is really, really important, and kind of treating people and framing people with from a strength-based perspective, I think is a really important thing that we can't let go of. Yeah.
That's an excellent note to end this Q&A session on. And there's a lot of hearts going up the side of my screen, and my neck hurts from nodding my head vigorously at this kōrero. I really want to thank all of our panelists for sharing your really honest and genuine thoughts on some really important topics today. We haven't been able to answer all the questions, but we will be sending out a link to like a feedback survey. So please, any questions we haven't answered that you really want us to get back to you on, please put those into the survey. If you want more information on the health and wellbeing of Pacific peoples, our website has a lot of reports in terms of access to mental health and addiction services, such as the Access and Choice program. We've also got a big data dashboard that you can just go and dive into if that's your thing. But yeah, thank you all so much for listening to that Q&A session. I'm going to mute myself, and then Ella, I think you've got some closing remarks.
Oh, kia ora, Katie. Thank you so much for that Q&A session. It was brilliant. So lovely to hear from our panelists. I really enjoyed I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed our kōrero, and it's so aligned. So yeah, look, I've just had an awesome time this morning, and thank you to everyone that joined. Yeah, just had a wonderful time. Thank you. Yeah, so on that, we've got a minute left just to close off with, I think you did say a karakia this time, Mark. So just another big thank you from me. Ngā mihi koutou.
Te Hiringa Mahara, kia ora koutou, mō tēnei wā. So thank you everybody for coming. I'll do a prayer to close us with. And then I also kara kia whakakapi. Okay, that's just that. Whawhtelo mātou atua I lo whatu no whai uman manuel mātou whakmai moi. Sa mātou so lau pule ina mātou manatu lelei. Mea lelei a wawhi au mga luenga ue tō whia I mātou. Whawtai mō mea umu ue whai mo I mātou. I ule nei aso whaatasuna I pui pui I mātou. I ona toi taimi. Kia whakairia te tapa, kia wate ai te ara. Kia tūru ki whakataha ai. Kia tūru ki whakataha ai. Haumi e, hui e, taiki.
Yeah. Well, pito ka kite,
Mahalo.
everyone.
Ora koutou.